near, far, near, far. Welcome back to the BSides project. We're talking about range extenders. All right, so we've already established that we're using a HDMI input hardware-based switcher for our new video streaming system, and that we're using some HDMI output cameras, specifically PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom, remotely controlled cameras, so we can put them closer to the stage where our presenters will be talking about their security projects at BSides Portland. That means that the cameras are probably beyond the practical 25-foot range of HDMI. So, what are my options for getting cabled input back from those cameras to my hardware switcher, which is going to be probably 50 to 150 feet away, depending on the setting, over by the soundboard with all the other tech nerds. In the earlier videos, by the way, if you haven't watched those, check out the playlist. I'll set up the whole scope of the video streaming project. But we did decide that we had two options for range extension. One is the professional option, and one is the slightly lower cost option. If you need HDMI beyond the 25-foot practical range, there are two ways to go. The professional way is something called SDI. I keep a crate of these suckers around because I work on a lot of productions that are renting pro gear, and pro gear uses this thing called SDI, which is essentially, I'm going to simplify it a lot, but it's HDMI over coax. If you've ever watched people using high-end cameras, let's take the slow-mo guys. You see a slow-mo guy's camera? The preview output of that looks like one of these BNC style coaxial cable jacks. That's SDI. I can use these things that convert, take an HDMI input, turn it into the SDI output, put that at the camera, or buy an SDI-equipped camera, and then put its counterpart, I got buckets of these things, which does the opposite. It takes an SDI input and turns it into an HDMI output. These aren't bad. Blackmagic makes one that is under $100 that's bidirectional. Some of them are USB powered, some require a specialty wall wart. I'm not using the Blackmagic brand because, well, we've already talked about my budget tendencies. I have to be honest, I have to replace a few of these. They're cheap for a reason, and these are starting to glitch out on me every once in a while. So, okay, so if I was going to go the Blackmagic route, I'd budget $75-ish for the adapter at one end or the other. I'd probably end up going with an SDI-based camera, but that would have elevated the price for the camera. I think the PTZ camera that I'm using on this project, they're just under $400 each. They're around $429 US, but occasionally there's like a $30 to $35 coupon on the Amazon. But that means that I'm committing to SDI, which is committing to coax, and not just any coax, quad shield coax with these very nice crimp connectors. It does require not a specialized tool, but a tool that most people don't commonly have in their electrical toolbox to make these. Unless you're like me and you use them on a lot of pro rigs, in which case you've got 250 to 500 feet spools of this nonsense lying around in your workshop because you made a bunch of cables for your production kit. Right. I'm not using those. One is a cost reason. Two is a presenter's functionality reason. There's a problem at the presenter's end I'll talk about in a minute. And third is my audience. I introduced this in the camera video. These are HDMI extenders that take a HDMI input and use standard RJ45, Cat5, Cat6 networking cable to extend to almost 200 feet. I've got a power one end of the box. We talked about power over Ethernet as an option for running these. I've got two of them now. I bought a second one off Amazon, along with this bigger boy right here that I'm going to use for the presenter side. Getting ahead of myself. Now, a couple of notes on these. SDI is an industry standard like HDMI. These are proprietary. And I think I bought the same brand, but this is all in the business of what we call white box, meaning there's not a brand label on these things. So it's possible that the receiver and transmitter on these are interchangeable, and it's possible they're not. So once I start deploying these at scale, I am going to label them. By the way, I already have this, so I'm not going to take it out of the BSides budget, but if you don't have a label maker and you're doing any kind of video kit building or just, site tech in general, get a label maker. You'll thank me later. All right, so I've got camera 1, camera 2 settled with these 2 basic input outputs. In this box is HDMI extender splitter 1 in 2 ... It is 1 input, 4 output. It has the standard transmitter requires power, receiver does not note. It has a small user manual. Now, this solves several problems for me. I get an HDMI in and I get 4 outputs. 2 of these are HDMI outputs. 2 of these are going over the Cat 5, Cat 6 cable. Now, oddly enough, they're labeled Cat 3 and Cat 4. Networking professionals, ignore that. Just a reminder, these are just using networking cables to extend the range. They are not TCP/IP, UDP compatible networking stuff. Don't plug this into your router. They're just using standard off-the-shelf cables for the range extension. And then there's a switch here for EDID mode. This is going to force the input to output resolution mapping. Normally when you plug in your source, in most modes, it'll just take whatever the video output mode is from, say, the laptop on stage and turn that into the same 4 outputs. There may be cases where you want to force this to a specific mode. Say, I want to force this to be 1920 by 1080 or whatever. And that way you have a consistent output. Now, the other problem this solves for this box is once the presenter plugs in, their stuff isn't just going to my rig with the video streaming. Aside from the projector in the room, which is normally backstage somewhere, you also need to be able to get additional outputs to, say, any preview monitors you have in the front row. Let's say a presenter is on an elevated stage. You might have a sign language interpreter sitting below that, interpreting for someone in the front row who has hearing issues, or you've got somebody who's mobility limited and if they're in the front row, they can't look straight up. So you might want to set up a monitor for the interpreter so they can see what's going on with the slides in case that has any bearing on what they're signing to the audience. Or you might want to have another monitor, say, in the back, or a second row projector if the room's really big. That's where it's handy to have multiple outputs on this. So in the case that I'm designing for, I'm usually expecting there to be 1 projector in the room and 1 output that has to go to the streaming system. And then in the future, if we add these, extra monitors, projectors, I've got 2 outputs. So what I'm expecting to do is take this 1 signal in, take 1 output for HDMI, run it to the projector backstage, take 1 extender output and run it back to what I'm running in the back of house, i.e. the video rig that I'm building. Now, if the projector, say it's a long throw projector, it's backstage somewhere, maybe I've got to use the second range extension. I have flexibility now. Without this, what I normally have to do is take one of the SDMI extenders here and add a second box to the setup, right? So I'll usually have like an HDMI 1 to 2 splitter, 1 input, 2 outputs. Then I run one of those outputs to the projector feed, and I run one of the outputs to an SDI extender. 2 boxes, right? 2 points of failure, 2 wall warts to plug in at the stage level, and still doesn't solve my range problem, entirely. This kit, all what you see before you, is under $60. Now, just the HDMI 1 to 2 splitter, that's going to run you at least 20, probably closer to 30, and then I've already discussed that I don't like the cheap SDI boxes anymore, even though they're still in my kit until the Magic Smoke comes out. So I'd probably spend another $75 to get an SDI extender, but then I'd have to put another SDI thing on the other end. This is all handy because these are, remember the receiver boxes, they don't require power. All I need is the transmitter box, but it's sitting on stage with the laptop, which is going to have power because you need to power the laptop during the presentation. Otherwise it goes to sleep, like some of you do when I talk about this stuff for too long. Now, even if you're not doing a permanent install in a carry case like I am for this project, these are great to have in a field video kit. Because if you run into the same problem I do, even if you just use this as a 1 to 2 splitter, you might as well go ahead and spend the extra couple bucks and get the range extension capability. So, handy stuff. Remember, I've got to label these separately, and I'll label them 1, 2, and 3. 1 is going to be for my main camera. 2 is going to be for my safe shot coverage camera. let's keep that in the box. That's a handy reminder about the powering of the device. Input 3 is going to be what the projector is using. So this is, one of these is going to be camera 3 input at the switcher, and one of these is going to be 3-2, 3-1, 3-2, and they'll map to these outputs on my projector. One other note I want to make about range extenders, whether it's SDI or Cat6, is, all right, why didn't I use SDI? Again, this is what professionals use. It's standardized, right? So why would I not go with the standard device and go with the kind of weird stuff that is, you know, using what we call a de facto standard, meaning whoever designed the device sets the standard, not a committee of video professionals. If I was going to rent pro gear, I'd go SDI all day long, because I know the cameras, like these, you know, multi-$1,000 Sony cameras that we use for some events, right? They have SDI outputs. I can plug that into an SDI switcher. That would be all golden. That gear is more expensive out of the box than HDMI. So it's a cost issue for my Tally O money over in the corner of the video. The second reason is, what kind of event am I doing? I'm doing an event for security professionals. You know what security professionals love? Networks. I'm at the BSides Portland in 2024. I get a bad cable. I get a bad Cat6 cable. I got to fix it before the show starts, or fix it during the lunch break. What do you think is going to be easier for me to get from somebody who is presenting, someone who's doing a workshop downstairs, a 10-minute walk to a Staples or an Office Depot or a Best Buy in a downtown Portland situation? That's an easier proposition than finding somebody who's got a quad shield RG6 crimp kit, unless you keep one in the case. And you can buy RG6 pre-made with these cable ends, or you can buy RG6 on a spool at a hardware store. If I'm at an event for security professionals who have a networking background versus video nerds, I can get my hands on a network cable at BSides or a similar event much faster than I can one of these. And the overall investment in the equipment is cheaper. Now, SDI has a couple of cases where, again, I would totally use it. This isn't one of those situations. Because even like we work with Portland State University all the time. They're one of our event hosts. They have been in 2022, 2023. This is what they keep in their kit. I find out about this stuff when I work with other AV geeks at these shows. And they're using this stuff all over a decent-sized US university. This is what they have in their bags. I'm going to keep it in my bag too. It also keeps my costs down, so let's revisit the Tally. All right, when we do our next BSides project video, I'm going to talk about PTZ, Pan Tilt Zoom. These are remotely controlled cameras. Most of the ones I've worked with in the past use a serial cable, just 2-pin, standard wire, to control cameras hundreds of feet away. I'm going to go with a slightly higher end controller this time, hoping it'll work out. It's got some features that I've never used before. I get preview operations, it runs over standard networking cable, I can use this to use PoE to power the remote cameras, and I think it's going to be pretty cool, but we won't know if it does what I need it to until I take it out of the box. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching the BSides project. If you want to find out more information about the 501c3 I'm working with, go to BSidesPDX.org. Search for BSides Portland on YouTube. You can see all of the panel videos that we put out the past couple of years. And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.